Dad, take me to the ER, like something's really wrong with my eyes. And I went in there and so much scar tissue and all these, the surgery just didn't go correctly. And I lost the rest of my eyesight, basically. So a lot of my plans just felt like they couldn't happen anymore.
If something standing between you and your happiness, it was for me. I had to face my depression and the constant negative self-talk. Therapy helped me realize I deserve to be happy. That's why this podcast is called I Choose Health, because I made the choice to heal and I want to share that with you. It's Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. 60% of you who are watching this podcast are men. And brothers, it is time to take care of yourself. As a gift to you, we've partnered with BetterHelp as our sponsor to help you start your own healing journey. We all face moments when life feels overwhelming, whether it's stress, anxiety, or just feeling stuck. Talking to someone can make a real difference. And that's where our sponsor BetterHelp comes in. BetterHelp offers professional online therapy that's convenient, affordable, and entirely on your schedule. You can connect with a licensed therapist by video, phone, or even chat, whatever works best for you. Let our sponsor BetterHelp support you on your journey to better mental health. You can get 10% off your first month by going to betterhelp.com/iChooseHealth. That's betterhelp.com/iChooseHealth for 10% off your first month. Take the first step toward feeling better today. All right, guys, welcome back to the I Choose Health podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Leslie. What if losing your sight gave you a clearer vision of your purpose? Today, we sit down with Dr. Elizabeth Wisniewski as an embodied leadership coach, somatic healer, and resilient soul who turned more than 30 surgeries and vision loss into a powerful calling. We'll explore how your body can become your greatest teacher, your nervous system your guide, and your presence your superpower. Dr. E, welcome to the I Choose Health podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here today.
Yes, thank you for joining us. So, I want to look at, and as you know, with our podcast, we focus on the themes of resilience. And I know that your story of losing your eyesight and gaining a new kind of vision is incredibly powerful. Can you take us back to one of those surgeries or moments of loss and share how you found strength in your body instead of your circumstance?
Absolutely. So when I was 21, I had just finished undergrad. I had studied environmental studies and political science and planned on going to law school. And so about a week after undergrad, I go back home to Michigan for this surgery, and I'm supposed to gain more sight back in my left eye. And I had already lost most of the sight in my right eye when I was 14, so 7 years prior. And I wake up from this surgery, and it felt different in my body than other times I've, awakened in the post-op room and recovery. And I was in a lot of pain just in my face, because it's kind of like eyes are like teeth. When your teeth hurt, it's like hard to get away from it. So when your eyes are in pain from surgery, it's right there. It's very centralized for you. And I had this sinking feeling that I had lost more eyesight, and they had released me from the hospital, but I had to see the doctor in the morning. I went back to the hotel, and I was just dumping ice in a bath. Like, I couldn't cool my body down enough. And I was sitting there crying, and at 3 a.m, I was like, Dad, take me to the ER. Like, something's really wrong with my eyes. And I went in there, and so much scar tissue and all these, the surgery just didn't go correctly. And I lost the rest of my eyesight, basically. So a lot of my plans just felt like they couldn't happen anymore. And I was sitting at my parents' house, and I heard this commercial on TV for a medical massage school. And I thought, all my friends always were like, will you massage me, when I was an undergrad? And I'd never taken anatomy or anything before. And so I started this program, and 2 weeks in, I went to my dad and I was like, thanks for paying for undergrad, but I think I meant to be a chiropractor, actually. So then I went back and I took all these science classes because I had a bachelor's of arts, not science. without being able to see, like chemistry and physics, doing all the math out loud, mental math with my professors, learning anatomy and physiology now without being able to see it, but being able to really feel and palpate the body. And I knew that I wasn't meant to just like sit at my parents' house for the rest of my life and do nothing because I had lost my eyesight. So that's what really motivated me of like, I'm going to keep going. And eventually that led me to getting a second doctorate. I have a PhD in somatic depth psychology as well, and about 25 plus other certifications. And I knew in my soul, in my soma, in my psyche, that there was more for me and there was lessons in this. And that took a lot of years of therapy, from like talk therapy to somatic movement-based therapy as well, to re-inhabit myself and my body and its wisdom of like, this is a challenge, but I can turn it into a strength.
Definitely. Now, I know that many people disconnect from their bodies when they experience trauma or chronic health issues. What helps you stay present in your body during such physically and emotionally intense time?
Being present with that and knowing that everything's temporary in a way. Like, pain is intense, which I alluded to already, but also pain as a teacher. So it's kind of like you can be present with it. Like if you're doing a really hard workout, you're like, well, this is challenging. This hurts. But I also know like I'm strong. I can keep doing this. So I'm always in like conversation with myself of if I have something that I'm nervous about, let's say, I'll be like, okay, this certain task is 30 minutes. I can do anything for 30 minutes. And that's how I talk to myself quite often. And that builds up my resilience, honestly. It's just that self-talk, self-motivation. Even when I was studying for national board exams for chiropractic school to become a doctor, the way they grade them, I was like, out loud in the shower, I'd be like, smarter than 70% of people. So I'm always like big upping myself with it. And so I think that that's where the motivation comes from.
Right. Oh, that's amazing. And I know that for those of us who spent most of our lives living in our heads, what does it practically mean to lead from the body instead of the mind?
There's this whole thing, especially in Western culture, of I think, therefore I am, coming from Descartes. And that equates to mind over matter. But when we look at the root word matter, it comes from Sanskrit, mata, which means mother. And so with that kind of energy, that's the body. We all have masculine, feminine energy. Like that's your receptivity, the wisdom of the body, your intuition. And so instead of being like that mind over matter, it's coming into relationship with, this is what I'm noticing in my body. And somatics is the lived experience, the subjective first-person experience of your body. And there's 3 parts of it. There's interoceptive awareness of, I'm noticing my heart rate. I'm noticing there's some pain in my toe. What you're noticing in your body. Exteroceptive awareness, you're noticing what's happening around you. And then proprioceptive awareness, this is where my body is in time and space. And for me, losing a lot of my eyesight, that was one of the biggest things I had to work on was my proprioception. I was a competitive swimmer for 12 years. I rode crew, but then now I can't see. And so it's changing how I walk, how I move. So an example of like neuroplasticity, and this plays into the body as well, is learning yoga. And then what really helped me with yoga was kickboxing. And I trained one-on-one with a kickboxing coach. And I wanted to create something called yoxing, which was kickboxing and yoga combined. And I was like, that would be fun. But that's what brought me back into my body too, because in yoga, you're doing standing poses. And I would have to feel all parts of my foot on the earth if I'm in tree pose and I'm leaning into one foot, which then helped me with kickboxing. So that's when I started to notice that the neurons that wire together, fire together. And then another example that was really a wild experience for me somatically was bear crawl. Because I'm like, I understand. I need to move my right arm and my left leg. Get it. My brain gets it. I know my body can do it. But reconnecting that after losing my eyesight was so mentally fatiguing. But once those neurons fired together over and over, they wired together, and it changed how I moved and how I was showing up in myself and in my body, because my proprioceptive awareness, where I am in time and space, completely shifted. And then that helped me as a chiropractor, because I'm never sitting. I'm constantly moving, and I specialize in working on pregnant people and babies. So there's always like lots going on all around me, and I have to be really aware where I am in time and space, because at any point there can be a toddler running up at me, or there's toys everywhere, and I have to be so aware from a body sense. So that just coming into that relationship of like, there's a lot of wisdom the body has. And if we can pay attention to that, and you can practice that through like a body scan meditation. That's a really good way to start gaining awareness of where you are in your body, and then listening to it.
And that's really interesting, because even as a personal trainer, that's one of the first things when we're taking clients through a stability phase, we're working on their proprioception as well, and just trying to familiarize them with these particular movements. So just how interesting that this translates into different areas of life, different areas of movement as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And it's just, our brain is so amazing with that neuroplasticity. And then even when you lose a sense, your other senses do get more keen. And they've been able to prove that through functional MRI imaging of the brain, where cells will migrate from one part of your brain to another when you have a diminished or lost sense.
Well, now I wanted us to look at, you already mentioned some of the challenges. And I know that, I want to know, how does somatic intelligence shift the way someone shows up as a leader, whether in a business, a family, or even in their personal healing journey?
I think as a leader, it's that pause, that moment of taking a breath instead of being reactive, and listening to like, okay, so I'm going to back that up. I practice something somatically called bracketing, where I'm like, I'm going to literally put brackets around this and then come back to it. And I might put like 5 minutes on it or whatever it's coming up for me. And that's that pause. And it's like a sacred, soulful pause for me, at least. I'm like, why am I feeling so activated by what just happened? And I'm noticing my heart rate increased, my breathing shifted, it's more shallow. What can I do to like kind of stretch my scaling muscles, like ear to shoulder, to like release some of that tension and allow my ribs to expand properly? Or do like a breath work technique for a few minutes to come back in and then be like, what's really going on here? Why am I feeling so triggered or activated? So our body's giving us all these cues, but a lot of times we just override that, and they're like, no, this is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to take action. And one of the quotes I like really live by is from Gandhi. And he says, intention without action is delusion. And I find that so interesting, because the intention also for me translates to intuition, somatic wisdom of the body. And the action is that more, you could look at it as more masculine energy of like, take massive action to make a change. But you need both aspects of the intention and action with it. And so but that comes through listening to your body and noticing those cues.
Yes, definitely. And I know you talk about presence and purpose. How can use their nervous system as a compass to find both in a noisy, how can people use their nervous system as a compass to find both in a noisy, fast-paced world?
Man, we're living in sympathetic dominance, where adrenal glands are all, I kind of think of them as like California raisins are all dried out, like poor little adrenals pumping out cortisol all day. And people are in fight or flight, but there's other parts of that. They're in freeze, they're in fawn, they're in flock. There's all these F words. And I'll tell my patients, I'm like, your body's going to choose your own F word for sympathetic dominance. But guess what? You don't have to live there. We can visit fight or flight. That can be really important. That can get us out of a dangerous situation. But we need to live in a different part of our nervous system, which is parasympathetic. That's where you rest and digest. That's where you heal. You're made of 70 trillion cells that need to repair and renew and rejuvenate all the time. But you can't do that if you're in fight or flight. And so that's where the nervous system component comes in, and having those moments of mindfulness. Our culture and society really pushes us to space out, like to numb out, to drink to do drugs or, play video games and to constantly space out. And sometimes, maybe you need to just have that little bit of time to play a video game or something. But oftentimes what I truly believe we need is a time to space in and to be more aware of what's going on so that we can show up more for ourselves and for the people around us. And that's being in more parasympathetic rest and digest state. And for me, it shows up in my practice all the time. Like, if a baby's experienced a traumatic birth, they'll come in with constipation. And if the parents are really anxious about it, I'll have to be like, hi, can you be present with your baby? But you got to pull a little bit of energy back as well, because their nervous system isn't complete yet. And it's going to take another 9 months to develop, and they're trying to co-regulate. But they're going to co-regulate however the parent is as well. So it shows up for me in my daily life all the time, how I'm witnessing how society and culture is really pushing us into sympathetic dominance.
Definitely. Now, some common ways unhealed trauma shows up in leaders and healers who think they've done the work.
I would say through something called spiritual bypass or toxic positivity, where that, it's kind of that go with the flow, but it's really about my flow and not really acknowledging the people around us. And that can be really challenging. I don't know if you can see it, Go with Wolf tattooed on my arm. And for me, I was being told to go with the flow all the time. And one day in meditation, I saw the word flow written backwards as wolf. And I couldn't believe this coming through. So I'm spelling it forwards and backwards. And then I went and got it tattooed that day on my body as a reminder of I go with my own flow. And that's more divinely feminine for me, but it's more embodied for me, go with wolf. So that's how I see things happening often around me. And so I hope that helps with that question.
So, I think that as you're explaining, it seems like beyond just the scientific side of things, that there's something about this experience somatically that taps us a little bit deeper into the spiritual as well, because there seems to be a focus on that presence, right? Being present, being aware. I think that as human beings are oftentimes the term I'm looking for is that we're always in autopilot mode, right? We're always just going. Whereas there's a sense in which the divine is something that's always present. So I think I'm getting an understanding of what you're saying there.
I love that. Absolutely. You're definitely picking that up, is how I like to explain it. Especially going back to somatics and what's the difference between the soma and the body. A perspective would be that when you pass away, your body's still here on earth, but your soma's not, because your soma is your lived experience. And for me and how I show up in the world, that also has soul or spirit connection with it, because I think we have that spark of life in us. And I think that's really beautiful. And so that's how I define soma versus the body. And what I find is that a lot of healers, hands-on healers, doctors, chiropractors, massage therapists, and beyond, they work with the body, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're working with the soma and how they're asking questions, if they're trauma informed. Nobody's perfect, but I really think if you acknowledge, I say to my patients, this is a safe and sacred place. Consent for me is ongoing. Consent can end at any time for any reason or for no reason at all. So that's an example of how I show up at being somatically and trauma informed, because I want people to feel really safe in their bodies and to be able to tell me, that technique isn't working for me, or I'm having resistance because I'm really scared of chiropractors. And I'm like, great, let's rewrite that story. So that's the difference for me.
Now, for people living with chronic stress or invisible illness, what are some practical somatic tools they can use daily to regulate their nervous system and reclaim their health?
I really believe that most people need to be in some form of therapy.
Welcome to week 15 of 52 Choices, where tiny habits create massive change. This week's choice is to add 10 minutes of stretching to your morning or night routine. Why? Because stretching isn't just for athletes. It's for everyone who wants to move feel, and age better. A 2020 study in the Journal of Physical Therapy Science found that daily stretching significantly improves blood flow, reduces stress, and increases flexibility, all in just 10 minutes a day. Stretch at night. It helps calm the nervous system and improves sleep quality. Stretch in the morning. It reduces muscle stiffness and boosts circulation to start your day with energy. Whether it's yoga, static holds, or mobility work, just 10 minutes can decrease tension, improve posture, and enhance recovery. Here's your challenge. Commit to 10 minutes of stretching each day this week. Morning, night, or both. Make health personal. Make a choice to be you.
Just across the board. But that doesn't mean it needs to be, let's say, talk therapy. There's a big movement within somatics for somatic-based therapy, like somatic experiencing, or I'm a registered somatic movement therapist. And so processing it through your body, like painting, drawing, writing poetry, music, dancing, and just putting on music and dancing can be so powerful to moving that trauma through the tissues and coming up, because it gets stuck in your fascia. And so those are different ways of moving the trauma and coming into relationship with it. And an example would be with birth trauma. The research shows that the more times you share the story, the more you can make meaning of your experience and find a sense of wholeness. So I'll have people voice memo their story, write it out, draw it out. I had one mom draw out her first traumatic birth, only to have that child who was 4 at the time come in and be like, "What are you doing?" And then she told him, and then he ended up drawing like, "Oh, here's you before I was born," and like participating. And that was a huge moment for this mom to rewrite that birth story and to find wholeness. So I really think through the arts and through movement, we can find wholeness. I started painting again because I used to paint, even though I can't see. And then I'll be like, "What colors are these?" But I feel just by the energy. Or at one point I had reached out to a conscious hip hop artist in LA. I learned how to write rap with him and like went and recorded in a studio with him in LA, like just creating different experiences of like, I told my life story through a song and of losing my eyesight. That was really profound, and honestly more profound than just sitting and talking about it. So I think there's ways that are really embodied within all of us that we can find wholeness.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, what's one myth about somatic work that you wish more people understood correctly?
Oh gosh. I would say, almost going back to what we were just talking about, that it doesn't have to be spiritual for you. That's just how it shows up for me. But it could just be like, this is my lived experience, and I'm really struggling living with chronic pain, and I don't want to be in pain anymore. I mean, I don't think people should have to be. What are your activities of daily living? How can we get you moving and feeling better? If you want to be able to kayak every day, let's get you there. That's how I look at it. So it doesn't have to be spiritual and scary or woo-woo or any of that. It can simply be like, my lived experience is this, and I want to shift it maybe, or I want to be in a better place around that so I don't hurt as much.
Now, as a visually impaired woman, how has your relationship with your body and leadership evolved over time, especially in spaces where you may have been underestimated?
Oh my gosh, I have such a great story for this. When I was in chiropractic school, I had a lot of leadership positions nationally and in the state of California. So I was at this conference, and there was a bunch of chiropractors that were like mostly older men from the East Coast there. And they're all speaking. And then I went up to speak, and I just said, when people get nervous, they'll often picture the crowd naked. I'm so glad I can't see any of you. They loved it. It was just something that channeled through me. I wasn't expecting you saying that. And it was so great because they laughed and I could feel their energy and it shifted the mood. So that's kind of like something I'll do because, honestly, there's days where I'm like, this really sucks. I really wish I could see even for a few minutes. It would really help me out in this moment. But I also know that that's just not where I'm at right now. And there's a good possibility it will shift with technology. I just do the best I can. And if there's an opportunity not, I don't want to be super self-deprecating, but like also like there's humor because like we're here and this is just what it is. And I don't want to take myself too seriously. Have fun with it too.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely something that has been lost in the last couple of years in terms of just being able to, in spite of our whatever things that we see as insecurities, I remember in the past being able to laugh at myself or being told like just be okay with that, be comfortable enough to kind of be able to joke about yourself, but understand that you're not taking it to deprecating levels where you're putting yourself down.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree. And it's just what it is for me. So if there's like that opportunity and it comes through me, I'm like, that's just where we're at. And I'm okay. I've done my work and I'm always evolving and learning.
Yeah, definitely. Now you talk about empowerment as one of your 5 pillars. How does someone who feels broken or limited start to feel empowered in their body again?
I think you have to go into that wound and that trauma in a really safe way and maybe tiptoe into it. You don't have to jump right into it, but you have to form a relationship with it in a way. And that's where it goes back to like the arts and movement and writing. Maybe you write a letter to it, like whatever's showing up for you that's disempowering you. And that's how I enter it, because there's an energy with it often and a charge. And so once you start acknowledging something like that, it can shift the energy and shift the charge over time. Because I don't feel like we can really heal something if we can't acknowledge it first.
Yep. Definitely. And that kind of brings me back to a couple of weeks ago, we had Adam Sudd on the podcast who was talking about addiction and how he overcame addiction. And he said that one needs to be present in their mind to deal with their addiction. And so just being able to find that presence, it really is at the root of a lot of healing.
Yeah, I agree.
Now tell us about Dream Planet and how your embodied leadership approach translates into tech spaces and creative communities.
Sure, I love this question. So Dream Planet is a platform for anyone who's a creator of any sort, from film to music, painting, fashion, and beyond. And so you can join as a creator or as a fan and as an investor. So it's a place where you can get direct distribution of your music, because the biggest issue facing creators and musicians right now is funding. And if you don't want to sell your soul to a record label, or that's not even an option for you, you still need to get funded to get your art out to the world. So what we've done with Dream Planet is create this platform where you can put it there, and then you can actually do a campaign and get funding from people within the app. But what's really cool, if you invest in an artist, then you actually get some of the royalties back and real money to you as a fan. So you're really investing in these artists, and it's this full circle of a new creator economy.
Wow. That sounds really cool. I'm probably definitely going to look into it myself as well.
Yeah, we're available in the App Store and Google Play, and it's just, it's in its infancy, but we're seeing so many people come in and putting their music and art out there already and launching campaigns that it's so powerful and really exciting to witness. So I grew up playing all these instruments and write music, and so music and art is really important to me. Even though I'm this double doctor, like there's this deeply creative part of me, so that's what really drove me to being part of Dream Plan.
Now, what's your biggest vision for how somatic leadership could transform healthcare, work, or social movements in the next decade?
Yeah, so a lot of research is quantitative instead of qualitative. Qualitative is going to be those stories, those lived experiences. And quantitative data, like that's important, but also statistics can be skewed very easily by the statistician. And so it's not as concrete as people think, just all these numbers. And I also don't want to just break people down into a number. And so although I'll ask pain scales in my personal practice, like I said earlier, that's not my goal. I want you to be able to live and do the things you love with ease. and hopefully pain-free as well. And so I really would love people to move more into this somatic lens, qualitative. Even when my research for my dissertation for my PhD was on the lived experience of cesarean birth from a cross-cultural perspective. And I went really deep into hard topics around obstetric violence and obstetric racism and the history of that. And so instead of just doing surveys, I actually interviewed people who had had unplanned C-sections and sat with them going through these traumatic stories. And I learned so much, and it's really hard to code that data, and it takes a lot more time in some ways than just collecting numbers. So I would love to see a shift into recognizing that qualitative data is equally as important as quantitative, because these are people we're dealing with, and they're not just numbers. And we need to honor that. So that's what I would like to see.
I'm glad you shared that, because it's part of the reason why I started a podcast as well. I've learned early on that experts can be seen in two areas. They're either experts who have studied this particular subject, or they're experts from the point of view that they have the lived experience. So they're the ones that can tell you what it means to go through like a somatic difficulty, or to go through dealing with cancer. So I'm glad that you're sharing that, how important the qualitative experience is.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of times, especially with like the birth work I do, for millennia in most cultures, women would be in a circle sharing those birth stories, and there'd be midwives, and you'd be passing down that information. And we don't have that anymore. And so how are you supposed to learn and make meaning of your experience? Because women are told, well, your baby's here, they have 10 fingers and 10 toes, so just be grateful. And then they're just supposed to push their trauma away, even though they just had abdominal surgery, which in any other circumstance outside of birth, you would be resting more. And that's really hard. So I like to really acknowledge that and work with people.
Now, for someone who's listening right now who feels disconnected from their body, what's the very first step they can take toward embodiment?
Breathing. Like, so simple, but so challenging. Noticing your breath. Is it shallow? Learning how to breathe diaphragmatically, allowing your lungs, your ribs to expand three-dimensionally. That is really key, because if you're going to get into other movements and, or even if you're preparing for childbirth, like you need to work on your pelvic floor, that starts with breath. And so I've sat people up on my chiropractic adjusting table where I'm like, okay, we got to go back to the basics. We have to learn how to breathe, because when I'm adjusting like their thoracic, their mid-spine, and I'm like, take a deep breath, and they're like, and I'm like, okay, go back to basics. So I really think that's a great entry point. And one thing I heard that I think you'll appreciate was I once read that breath is the connective tissue of the living universe. So it's like the fascia of the universe, and we all need it. But it can get bound up like fascia can in the body. And how can we break up that, those knots and those adhesions, so we can lengthen and relax and be more present?
Yeah. Wow. Now, if you had to choose one body-based practice that changed your life the most, what would it be and why?
I would say yoga. It really brought me to this different place. I really love it because growing up being a swimmer, unless you're on a relay team, like swimming is very individual, and you're really you're in your body, you're in your mind, you really have to be present with it. So yoga reminded me of that as well. But then being a person with no sight, it was really hard for me, but I love a good challenge. It was awesome. And then I ended up becoming a 500-hour yoga teacher. I used to teach like 3 classes a week in private yoga as well. So I really, when I go for something, I'll go really hard on it. But it really just brought me because yoga is the union of breath and movement. So it taught me how to breathe again and how to move in a different way and to be present with things that are really uncomfortable, to literally sit in that discomfort and know it's okay, know it's temporary, and to keep breathing, and then things will shift. And usually a yoga pose, an asana that's really challenging is probably the one I need the most. And I think that's kind of a life lesson.
Well, Elizabeth, Dr. E, thank you so much for just sharing with us your lived experience and then also your expertise as well. You've definitely introduced me to an area that I am not at all well versed in as well. And definitely something that I want to consider more and look into more. So that I'm also making sure that I'm considering everyone and the different challenges that are there as well.
I love it. This is so fun. Thanks for having me.
Definitely. And this is also the time where we allow the guests to share with the audience where we can connect with you, where we can follow you as well.
Great. The best place to connect with me is Instagram, Dr. Elizabeth Wisniewski, and I can send that to you for your show notes. And then also, I encourage everyone, download Dream Planet on the App Store, Google Play. I'm on there as Dr. E, Queen Dream. You'll find me. And that's a great place to join as a fan or a creator. Yeah, that should be it.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Again, I'm your host, Stephen Leslie, for the I Choose Health podcast. Just reminding you that choosing health is about choosing power, possibility, and purpose. And I hope that the stories that you hear on our podcast and that you've heard today continue to encourage you to choose your health over everything else, to choose the best version of you. And if it so moved you, be sure to subscribe to our channel, hit the notification bell so you can be notified every time we drop an episode. 98% of you who are watching the channel are enjoying the channel and receiving a lot of value from it. So please just make sure to subscribe so we can continue to really help others out there. Again, I'm Stephen Leslie with the I Choose Health podcast. Thank you for tuning in and looking forward to seeing you guys next week.